So you can see now I finished wrapping the whole of the hoop with the wool. I've got one tail here and then a little bit that was left from before. We made the loop and first tied it on, and just tie those off nice and tight with a double knot. Okay, and then you can cut them, well, I should put just a very small bit of glue once again on the knot just to hold it, and you can cut them quite short, but obviously not cutting the knot. Okay, and let that set for a minute. So the next job, we need to make markings on the hoop to begin making your web. And I do this by starting at the top where we finished off, making a tiny mark with my marker so I know I'm starting, and then use the ruler to go directly down opposite that. So I have a small mark there, know where to go. Now if you're good with using your own judgment, you can probably figure out where you want to put your next markers. So we come round to a quarter of the way round, as if it was a quarter past, and then go straight across to a quarter to. Doesn't matter if these are a little bit off, but the more accurate you get these the first time round, the more accurate the whole web will look. Like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect, but at the same time, it's worth trying to get them even. So I've got 8 points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 points going around the circle. Now I'm going to use my sparkly strong thread. I've gone to gold actually because I think it shows better up against this this background. I tie a knot directly onto the first point. That, pull it in nice and tight, like that, double knot, and you can snip it quite close. Now you need a good bit of this. You don't want so much it's difficult for you to manage, but you need a good bit of it so that you don't end up running out. Okay, take a needle. Let's move that away so you can see properly. Take a needle and thread it. Okay. I probably got quite a bit too much there, but anyway, we'll see how we manage. If it gets too much, I can trim it a bit. So take your thread and your needle. You come in close. You can see this is where the first marker is, the next marker. So put the needle over the top of the ring of the hoop and then pull it through. But what you want to do is make a loop there so you can pull on it. Can you see how the needle has brought the thread back? So you're getting a loop there, and you position it where that marker is. Pull it nice and tight, and you'll need to hold it then with your thumb and forefinger like that and go over again. This is the next marker. I can see they're not perfect, but you know, it'll be perfect enough for this. Over the top, reach through and pull the thread. So once again, you've got this little loop here and you're pulling it tight on the marker. Okay, thumb and forefinger again to hold it nice and tight so it doesn't end up going slack. Over the top, reach through. You have to have that loop there in order to have something to pull against. If you didn't have the loop, it would just, it would move around the hoop, and you wouldn't be able to pull any tension against it. And then back to the beginning. So you come right back to where you started, and you can see the first octagon has been formed. So next thing to do, keep your thumb and forefinger here, hold it nice and tight, and put the needle through the gap. And it's exactly the same technique. You're making that loop again, but you're bringing the loop using just the judgment of your eyes into the center of that line, pulling it a little bit tight, hold it with your thumb and forefinger, and back again. So you need to be using one hand to do the sewing and one hand to be holding it. Judge again into the center of that line, pull it down nice and tight so you can see there's a triangle forming, and hold it with your thumb and forefinger. All the time you're using your eyes to judge where the center point of that line is. Don't pull too hard when you do that, because you might snap the thread. Just pull enough so you get this nice tension in the thread. And again, be careful when you choose your thread for this. If you were to use a very soft wool, it probably would break fairly easily and you wouldn't get such a good effect. When you come to the last point here, your final point is here, where you get the final triangle. Match it up and pull it, and then you'll see you have the first star is made. Now what we're going to do is keep going back around in exactly the same style, this time going into this first triangle. So into the first triangle, making your loop, pulling it into the center of that line, pulling it down a bit so you've got a bit of tension, and starting on the next one. You must always be using your thumb and forefinger to hold it so that you keep the tension. If you weren't doing that, it would become floppy. You can see now why I needed quite a lot of thread at the beginning, and the more you sew round, the easier it will feel, because you won't have such a long thread to deal with. And my final point, once again, goes back to there. Okay, it's the second row. Now we're going to do the third row, and this time we're going into these triangles. So each time you're working into the smaller ring of triangles as you go around. Once again, getting into the center. I think this sparkly thread works really well for this part of it, because you do get the feeling of a spider's web, or yeah, something that's made of something glittery and natural, which I really like. And for a long time, when I first started doing this, I was using ordinary wool, thinking it would be stronger, but actually the effect wasn't as good. Now we're on to the next ring of it. If you have small hands, which I do, using a hoop which is much bigger than this one becomes awkward, because you can't reach around. You have to start going in with your hands, which is more difficult. So this size and smaller works quite well if you have small hands. If you have bigger hands, you can choose a bigger hoop. Back to the beginning. Now I want to do one last go round, but I can't reach with my thumb and forefinger, so I'm going to have to go in like this to do it. That's what I mean by having small hands. And I have seen people do this right into the very centre. Usually I don't go right to the very centre, usually I just finish off where it's kind of convenient, but some people are able to do that. In fact, I had 2 South American girls in the group once, and they'd obviously done this technique many times before. They were absolute professionals at it, and they were able to sew their webs right into the centre, which I've never really been able to do. Make sure you don't get the needle caught in the actual thread as you're going round. Okay, final one. Okay, so now we're back, we've got our perfect star in the middle. I'm going to just finish off with a knot, and I know that you might think that this will look messy, but it won't if you're careful and do it nice and neat and tight. You won't really notice it. We can always finish off then with a little blob of glue again, just to make sure that it doesn't unravel, and then snip that off close to. So that's the first stage of the, or second stage I suppose, of the Dreamcatcher. We're just going to finish up there, and I'm going to sort out the beads and the feathers.